Utopia has been a word that has attracted me for many years actually, and I think there's an element of UTP in there as well. It's a silly little thing, but I think there is an element of those three letters appearing the same sequence. But the idealist angle that I've always had, I think, has attracted me, and that's why UTP ka Utopia and now Utopian Reality. It's just something that keeps coming back to me. I associate myself with this word a lot. So if I was going to do something of my own, it had to have a utopian element to it. So utopian reality, we are trying to think about a vision of Pakistan, tap into the emerging economy, tap into the youth population, and it's actually broken up into three groups. I'll cover that in the next slide. But the vision really is that I want to see how we can tap into that youth potential, and find why we are not able to create jobs and sustain jobs in Pakistan, which can actually kind of fast track that emerging economy. Why are we not able to tap into that potential that we have? And it has been a complex problem to address. It is still a complex problem, and it will probably remain a complex problem for a few years until it's resolved. But I think I felt that I need to play a part in this, and we have had these conversations before. So it is really being delivered through a value chain, which I'm calling the utopian reality. So I wanted to start with why. As I said, big fan of Simon Sinek, Golden Circle, and as I mentioned, majority of this youth population are job seekers. We have three groups: the privileged, the ones who get an opportunity to go through an education, whether it's a university or college or some sort of certification, but I consider them as a privileged class. We, alhamdulillah, have been part of that privileged class where we were able to get an education which we were able to use to our benefit in this world. Then there is a second group which unfortunately don't go through education but have some skill, hunarmand as we call in Urdu. They have some skill. They are skilled workers, but again they are a large part of our youth population. They are in that age bracket, so to say, Jawani hai. And the third one is unfortunately somebody who's just grown up, who didn't get an education, who's not had the opportunity to learn a skill or develop a skill, and has just grown up but is aged into youth. All three of them combined make up our youth population, and hence all three of them, when they grow up, they are expected to do some job. We don't have many job creators. We have very few entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurial spirit, as I call it, is lost somewhere. I wouldn't call it dead. It never is dead, but it's lost somewhere. And my own drive is I want to give back. I feel I have reached Maslow's self-actualization. I want to address that. Alhamdulillah, Allah has been very, very kind to me, to my family. A lot of things are in place, and whatever part I have left in this world, I feel there's an element of giving back. So there's a very, very strong why behind utopian reality, and I stress on that a lot because this caravan that want to start, it's a movement that I want to start. I want people to join in. It is very important that people align with this why, because there will be difficulties ahead. We would need a joint why, an aligned why, to be able to come through all the adversities that will follow, that what we are trying to do. So it is very important to question yourself, how you would want to contribute. We'll obviously finish the slide pack, but the why has to be aligned. And if that doesn't align, then I think it'll be very difficult to move hand in hand, so to say, in the direction that we want to go with utopian reality. The how and what kind of follows. I've spoken about the value chain. I have 6 slides to cover with 6 steps. The key focus is to remove roadblocks. There are weak points in this value chain in Pakistan, and that is the reason why we're not able to create and sustain jobs. So utopian reality will focus on the roadblocks. We'll try to remove these impediments. We'll work on the weaknesses. Whatever is working well, we will collaborate and partner with them. Whatever is not working well, as I told you, that gives me the adrenaline rush. That's the problem. I want to solve it, and that's where I'm focused. And it is industry agnostic. The solution that I'm trying to work towards, trying to present, is not just a technology I'm not talking about technology startups. I'm talking about industry agnostic value chain where we try to address the true problems of Pakistan. There is a need of solving those problems in Pakistan, and there are lots of them. It's not only tech. It could be agri, it could be pharma, it could be health, it could be textile, it could be environment. Different type of problems in Pakistan, big and small. Hence, the solution that I'm trying to go with is industry agnostic. And what it is really is an enabler platform. I want to be an enabler. I want to enable this value chain. I want to remove the roadblocks so the water flows. It's like a river which is getting stuck somewhere. I want to remove all those rocks in the middle and see how we can get this river flowing and take accountability from idea to execution. There are a lot of little good work happening in Pakistan in the value chain, which I'll speak about in subsequent slides. Uh, but there is nobody, at least to my knowledge, who's taking ownership of this whole value chain. The accountability of idea to execution and sustainability is missing. And that's the gap that I think Utopian Reality can fill. So the 6 steps, it starts with generating or nurturing that entrepreneurial spirit, which, as I mentioned, I feel gets lost in the education system. Or even if somebody doesn't go through the education system, the group 2 and 3, which I mentioned, the skilled workers and the unskilled youth, their home system, the way our culture is, the element of questioning, the element of curiosity, the element of trying something is somehow lost. Where we actually pull our children down when they are trying to put a finger in an electric socket, for example. Yes, we want to keep them safe, but the way we kind of do it stops them from trying something even dangerous, and that's why the risk appetite goes away. We don't allow children to question their teachers. We don't allow them to do research or try something new. That element of experimentation is gone. So how do we bring that back? It's a big problem. It's a complex problem, and I don't want to also set ourselves for something so big that we are not able to achieve anything. So I've been talking to a few people, and we were thinking, what is the right stage where we do an entry where we can at least get something out of this. And ideally, I would want to get into the school system. I would want to talk about STEM and build it right from the schooling system, but that is a big problem. And I would rather see us starting somewhere. And what I'm thinking is that it is really that we try to target the bachelor's program at the 3rd year, and to try to get them set up with a training package which speaks about entrepreneurship, but basically trying to focus on that, planting that seed of entrepreneurship, trying to bring in the entrepreneurial spirit, back into the game before their 4th year, because that's the time they are trying to think about their final year projects, what they want to do. And again, this is not just technology programs we're talking about. This is all across different disciplines. We can collaborate with educational institutes. We can talk about looking for opportunities after graduation as well. And I think if we are able to achieve this, we'll get 2 type of professionals coming into the market. One would be who still want to do a job but have the entrepreneurial spirit, and that's not bad because they will go into a Pakistani company and scale it from within. It still serves the purpose of our why, which is to create jobs and sustain jobs. If a Pakistani company grows from within, that also creates jobs and sustain jobs. But the ideal professional that we are targeting is somebody who wants to run his own company. He could create a job for himself as a one-person company, or he could create a job for 5 people in his company, but he needs to create jobs. That's the kind of 2 professionals that we would get in. Uh, that's the education system. Now, this training program needs to address even those youth which are not in the education system, which are skilled workers or unskilled workers. So we need a customized program for tapping into that market as well to get the entrepreneurs. The idea generation actually comes from anywhere. People don't need to go through an education to get through ideas. And I have personally seen that coming from. I'm originally from Takhar, by the way. I didn't share that. So I have seen the village life and the kind of innovation that comes from there with the limited resources is sometimes very surprising. So we need to have customized programs which actually tap into those 3 groups, create entrepreneurs, and then we move on. Every entrepreneur, once they enter our value chain, would be assigned a mentor and a coach. And when I say a coach, this is a trained coach. So I'm actually pursuing accreditation myself, and I'm looking to get more and more trained coaches into the group who are performance coaches, executive coaches, personal coaches, career coaches. So professional coaches are assigned to our entrepreneur along with mentors. We have a lot of mentors. You all are mentors actually, as I see them in some shape and form. We are able to get experts from the industry, but the element of coaching would be a key part of this journey which we assign to the to the entrepreneur. Sorry. The second step is generate and curate ideas. So if we have done our job well, which by the way, step one is a weak point in our value chain today. So in Pakistan, we have identified two big gaps or weaknesses, and one of them was the root cause. We are not generating entrepreneurs. What we are generating at best are people who are in it for I've seen something in the world. It worked really well. Let's copy it in Pakistan, and it's a hit and miss kind of a situation. Some get hit, which is great, but most of those ideas are not sustainable because they were not really generated from the same country where the problems are. It was a kind of a copy paste and a money minded solution, the end goal being money rather than something deeper which we are trying to address. So that's a problem, step one, and we want to address that. But if we are doing that job well, then we would have started generating ideas. We would be getting ideas into the idea hub, and that's where a think tank comes in. And this is a think tank that would grow. We would get this idea into the think tank. We would look for volunteers, the right kind of people who are interested in the kind of space that this idea wants to develop. But it's important that the coach and the mentor help the entrepreneur come to a why. Why are you trying to do this? Is this a solution looking for a problem, or is it something deeper? Is there a deep enough passion for you to drive this idea? Very similar to Utopian Reality. Utopian Reality at this stage is going through its own value chain, the same value chain, and we are at step two right now. So what's the deep drive for the entrepreneur to drive their idea forward? And that's where the coach and mentor have to help, so that by the time it comes to the think tank step two, he is a relentless entrepreneur. He is not going to give up. The short-termism aspect, of which is a risk to our value chain, wouldn't be there. I wouldn't sell for any cost, so to say. I'm not in this to sell my idea. I'm in it to grow this idea. So the general visibility is clear around the problem at this stage. A bit of realism comes into the idea, from the Hawaii Khayal to polishing the idea into are the assumptions validated? Are have we done focus group? Do we know what target market we are getting into? So a little bit of that, because the next step is all about a bit of resources getting spent. At this stage, it is still pro bono, people spending time out of passion. But before we move to the step three, which is acceleration, the idea should be vetted to a level where the mentor himself could actually, him or herself, could actually say that, yeah, this seems viable enough to go into an accelerate stage. And at all stages, we need to link to the utopian reality purpose of why. Are we creating jobs in Pakistan? Is this idea creating jobs in Pakistan? Is it supporting the value chain? Is it supporting sustaining jobs in Pakistan? Is it tapping into youth? Is it hitting the emerging economy? That continuous relink to the why has to be there. Otherwise, that idea doesn't go through this value chain. There are various other companies doing this as well. So it has to link to the utopian reality purpose of why. Then we get into accelerate to business case. This is where the idea lands, so to say. We try to land this idea to a bit more reality. We would want to talk about finance now. We are now preparing for the investor. Basically, we're preparing for the shark tank, so to say. So a launch and scale up plan. What is required to establish and run the company? Sales and cost forecast, cash flow, with the financial model. How are we going to convince the investor to spend on this? What are the milestones of payouts? How is this going to grow? So the accelerator concept, which by the way works really well in Pakistan, this is one of the good things that have happened in the last few years. We have a lot of accelerators, some government supported as well. The Ministry of IT has come into the picture. They're doing a good job. So I think here the element is more of collaboration. We're not competing with anybody. The beauty of utopian reality is that this idea is not competing with anybody. It is trying to build an enabler network. It is trying to build a collaboration framework. We are trying to not compete with anybody, rather enable everybody who's in the ecosystem. It's an ecosystem that we're trying to build. So this is where about 3 months to 6 months is the typical cycle of an accelerator to get from idea to a business case and be able to come in front of an investor. If you haven't realized already, each of these steps are communities in themselves. They are a network of networks, as I keep calling it. People who are working in this group, for example, are accelerators. People who are working in the previous group are think tank mentors. People experts in the field. The first group is all about coaches and mentor community. So all of these steps are actually communities in themselves. Then comes seed funding. So this is the group where we have a particular type of investor. This investor's DNA is all about high risk, but high reward. So they are willing to take a bit of risk, but they are also expecting a high reward. They are willing to stand behind a startup and develop it, invest in it. But the key thing again is that investors in this group also need to align with the utopian reality. Why? We are looking for those investors who are in it for helping Pakistan. They are in it for helping the youth. They are in it for tapping into that emerging economy. So that element of the why that utopian reality has to go across the chain. We are not looking for investors who are just in it to make money. Yes, money is absolutely a key aspect for an investor, but that's not the only driver, let's say. So this group would consist of different funds, venture capitalists, micro investors. We're trying to get a portfolio, so to say, made where investors can be part of this group, and they provide the necessary seed funding when we are ready to present a business case. A key input that came in was also that the credibility of that fund, the credibility of whether the money is clean, so to say, is it black money, is it white money. There's an element of AML, as we call it in the treasury world, anti-money laundering aspects. That element would have to be done by utopian reality, and utopian reality is actually taking a bit of credibility around that that the entrepreneur can trust. So that's the key part of the value that utopian reality would also provide. Step 5 is our biggest gap in Pakistan. The problem that we have is because nobody is owning this whole value chain. The accelerators, while they do a great job in getting the idea to a business case and the investor as well, from there onwards, the entrepreneur is pretty much on its own. Uh, they have to now make sense of the fact that they are no longer just an entrepreneur who had an idea, but they have to actually run a company. And this is actually, in my evaluation, an unfair expectation from the entrepreneur. The DNA of the entrepreneur is on one side of the spectrum, which is I want to fly, I want to innovate, I want to create, I want to scale, I want to commercialize, I want to sell. That's the DNA of this entrepreneur who was passionate about this idea. While we are expecting this entrepreneur to now suddenly become what I call the chief operations officer DNA, the operations guy, who is on the other side of the spectrum, which is all about control, governance, process, compliance, which, by the way, is not a bad thing. We actually need both of these DNAs, but it is unfair to expect the entrepreneur to also do this job. But unfortunately, that's how the situation is. And that's what leads to the frustration of the entrepreneur. And even though that entrepreneur started with a very futuristic and enthusiastic view, eventually gets frustrated, and the investor gets frustrated also. And these ideas are creating jobs to some extent, but they're not able to sustain. So what I'm suggesting is we're going to create an enabler platform which takes care of the nuances of running a company. So the operations layer of this company that has come through the value chain is actually enabled a platform as a service. And that contains finance, HR, IT, legal, marketing, and the typical operations function that is required to run this company is taken away from the entrepreneur, so to say, doesn't need to be hassled with it. He would obviously be provided a service management layer, an account management layer, a project management layer, but doesn't need to bother too much with it in the sense that it slows, those chains that are shackling this entrepreneur to fly are taken away by this platform that we are trying to introduce. And behind the scenes, this platform is actually enabled by other companies in Pakistan. So it's not that the platform is running finance, HR, IT companies themselves. There are companies in the market already, or they basically need to come to some SLA and standards and governance, which is what the platform is providing. But all scales of different companies are available, or if not available, then they come to the Utopian Reality, which I'll speak about on the next slide, the sustainability of it. But point being that we're trying to scale those companies as well, which are already existing in Pakistan, and becoming again a network of networks, and trying to provide them a platform where they can connect to and get business, while on the entrepreneur side we are providing them the services that that layer is offering. In fact, on a funny side, I'm not sure if you've seen that ad where somebody goes to a very expensive restaurant and orders basically a samosa, but it's a very sophisticated name, and he places a small order there, but behind the scenes the waiter is going behind outside the restaurant and chutney la ye la aloo wala ye mar. He's actually doing that. So I'm actually looking at the platform as a service exactly like that, using a technology term which I used in one of the conversations. This is the ETL layer in this value chain, where the entrepreneur gets the high service standards, the account management, the project management, the delivery credibility, so to say. While behind the scenes there is a mess. Nobody's denying that it is not the perfect market to do business in. But if we are able to solve this problem, where this is where I'm getting the adrenaline, then we have actually established a layer in the middle and opened the tap to kind of flow. Today, the river stops over here and gets frustrating for the entrepreneur. So it's a network of service providers which is vetted through a standardized framework. So Utopian Reality would actually have a standardized framework through an account management layer and provides the necessary SLA standards and compliance around operations. Just with step 5, we have actually achieved the create jobs element. The element of ensuring that jobs are created, we actually achieve with step 5. But then what I also observed was that the investor that has invested in the seed fund investor, it is unfair to now expect that investor whose DNA is high risk reward to stick around for a long period, because this type of an investor is, I wouldn't say fickle, but this type of investor has a 3-year horizon at max. It wants to do something else. It wants to spend, get the high risk, take the high risk, get the high reward, but wants to move out. And which is totally fine, because that is the kind of investor we need to invest in a startup. We need that high risk appetite. But it is unfair to expect that investor to continue beyond 3 years after the company has been successful. And hence the risk was that that investor would move out and that jobs would go away, and it would be difficult for that to sustain. So hence I'm introducing a 6th pool, which is sustained funding. This is also an investor group, but this is a different type of investor. This is an investor who doesn't want to take a lot of risk, wants to take over a running business and gets moderate returns, totally fine with it, but has the experience to scale up a business and sustain a business. So this is basically the second round, or infinity round. I'm just calling this group as the infinity round, because even if the second investor wants to go out and wants to sell the company, we'll again tap into the same group and look for another investor. The point is that this cycle has to continue for us to achieve our vision, which is to sustain jobs as well. And then again, the vetting of the investors is a common point with step 4, where the credibility of who gets into this group from a AML perspective, from a compliance perspective, but also from a why perspective, that we need to ensure that everybody who joins this value chain in whatever capacity they want aligns with the why. Lots of questions came. This is my last slide, by the way. But a lot of questions comes back to how will Utopian Reality make money? How will it sustain itself? And yes, I'm this crazy idealist who probably doesn't, is not caring about this as much at this stage. I need to, but I'm less worried about it because that's not my primary driver. I still need money to just sustain my family and keep Utopian Reality alive. Yes, I'll be creating jobs myself, but that's not the primary driver. But I have a thought about that as well. I'm just confident that this value chain is so interesting and there are so many opportunities that we could actually make money off that in various ways. And I have 3 ideas that I put in there, and obviously open to other suggestions. But we could take an equity in each idea that goes through the value chain, or we could have service charges on platform as a service, which is the enabler step, or we could have referral value as we take away the business development costs of all the companies that are in the network, because they are basically getting business or work from the value chain. So we could have a referral arrangement with our partners on the network behind the platform as a service. So these are the 3 areas where I think we can generate revenue for Utopian Reality as well. But for me, it's not about just the money. It is about, when we talk about sustainability, I see a risk that what if there isn't a high quality finance firm in Pakistan, or there isn't a learning program, a company who's interested in doing that? What would happen? For me, utopian reality will sustain itself. I would identify that as a gap and a weakness that needs to become an idea that goes to the utopian reality. We actually create the company ourselves to fill up the gaps that are in the system, and then they are part of our network. So utopian reality is going to sustain itself as whatever gaps and weaknesses we find in the value chain, because the element of sustenance is basically a key aspect of the vision as well. And hence, what I'm trying to say is that utopian reality would be built in a way that it is a model of self-sustenance. The money would be generated, all gaps, weaknesses would also be generated through the same value chain.